A viral video claims an artificial intelligence recently analyzed a secret Nikola Tesla patent from 1928 and uncovered a hidden weapon capable of controlling the weather, killing people with invisible frequencies, and even communicating with something living underneath the Earth's surface. Millions of people have watched it. Millions of people believe it. And almost none of it is true. But here is the strange part. The real story, the one buried underneath the myth, is arguably more interesting than the fiction, because it involves a real patent, a real genius who was slowly unraveling in his final years, and a mystery that historians still argue about today. So let's separate the fantasy from the fact, because what Tesla actually built, and why he built it, says more about the man than any conspiracy theory ever could. The patent people are talking about is real. It exists. You can pull it up right now on the United States Patent Office's own records. It's called Apparatus for the Utilization of Radiant Energy, and Tesla filed it not in 1928, but on March 21, 1901, with a patent officially granted on November 5th of that same year. That's not a small error. It places the invention nearly 3 decades earlier than the viral story claims, back when Tesla was still at the height of his career, riding the success of alternating current and the electrification of Niagara Falls, not as an isolated old man scribbling in a hotel room. Getting the date wrong isn't just sloppy. It changes the entire context of why the device was built in the first place. And it's the first sign that the popular version of this story was never built on real research. So what does the actual patent describe? Tesla proposed a surprisingly simple setup. An elevated metal plate, positioned as high as possible, connected to a capacitor, which was then connected to a ground wire. Tesla believed that certain forms of radiation constantly bombarding the Earth, sunlight, cosmic rays, and other charged particles from space, would strike the elevated plate and transfer a small electrical charge to it. That charge would accumulate in the capacitor, and once enough charge built up, a switching mechanism would release it as a usable pulse of electricity into a connected circuit. In his own words, filed directly with the Patent Office, Tesla explained that certain radiations possessed the property of charging and discharging conductors of electricity, and that this effect became especially pronounced when the receiving conductor carried a negative charge. In plain terms, Tesla thought he had found a way to pull small amounts of electricity directly out of sunlight and cosmic radiation using nothing but a plate, a wire, and a capacitor. This wasn't some fringe idea Tesla dreamed up in isolation. By the turn of the century, scientists across Europe and the United States were seriously investigating what was then called atmospheric electricity, the study of naturally occurring electrical charge in the air and in the ground. Tesla was fascinated by this field for most of his life. He believed, with total sincerity, that the Earth's atmosphere held enormous untapped reservoirs of electrical energy, and that if humanity could learn to harvest it, we could eliminate the need for fuel-based power generation entirely. This wasn't a cover story or a secret cover for something darker. It was quite plainly exactly what Tesla said it was, an attempt to harvest ambient electrical energy from natural radiation. The idea excited him precisely because it fit into his larger, lifelong obsession, delivering unlimited free energy to the entire planet. The problem is that the device doesn't actually work the way Tesla believed it would, at least not at any meaningful scale. When engineers and hobbyists have built working replicas of the patent over the decades, the results are consistent and unglamorous. The setup can generate a genuine electrical charge. This part is real physics, since elevated conductors do pick up small amounts of atmospheric static electricity, and materials do respond to ultraviolet light and other radiation in measurable ways. But the amount of usable power is tiny, often barely enough to produce a faint spark or trickle a small capacitor over a long period of time. It is nowhere near enough to power a light bulb continuously, let alone a city, and it never was. Tesla wasn't lying when he filed the patent. He appears to have genuinely and mistakenly overestimated how much power this method could realistically produce. It's a case of an extraordinary mind reaching past the physics that were actually available to him, not a hidden weapons program. To understand why Tesla would file a patent like this, you have to understand where his head was at that point in his life. By 1901, Tesla had already secured his place in history. His alternating current system had won the war of currents against Thomas Edison's direct current, and Tesla's polyphase motors and transformers had become the backbone of the American electrical grid. But commercial success was never Tesla's real obsession. What consumed him was the idea of wireless power, the dream that electricity could eventually be broadcast through the air or through the earth itself and received anywhere on the planet without a single wire. In fact, 1901 was the same year Tesla broke ground on Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, his enormous, ultimately unfinished project meant to prove that global wireless transmission of both information and power was possible. The radiant energy patent fits neatly into this same period of his thinking, another piece of his broader belief that the Earth and its atmosphere were an untapped electrical resource just waiting to be unlocked. Tesla's later years, it's true, did take a stranger turn, and this is where a lot of the mythology tends to get grafted on. As he aged, Tesla became increasingly reclusive, living out of hotel rooms in New York, working largely alone, and giving interviews filled with grand, sometimes unverifiable claims. He talked about picking up signals he believed might be transmissions from Mars. He talked about death rays capable of stopping armies at a distance, though he never provided working plans or independent verification for such a device. He grew obsessed with pigeons, one in particular, describing an emotional bond with a bird in terms that startled even his own colleagues. These stories are documented and real, and they paint a picture of a brilliant, but increasingly isolated man whose later claims outpaced what he could actually demonstrate. This is exactly the kind of biographical detail that makes Tesla an irresistible subject for conspiracy theories, because there's just enough genuine strangeness in his real-life story that outlandish additions can slide in almost unnoticed. That's precisely what happened here. Somewhere along the way, content creators took the real 1901 patent, shifted its date to align with Tesla's more eccentric final years, and layered an entirely fictional narrative on top of it. A supposed 2024 university AI study that, as far as any public record shows, does not exist. No named university, no published paper, no research team, nothing that can actually be verified. The specific claims piled on top only get more elaborate from there. That the device's real purpose was ionospheric weather control resembling a modern research program in Alaska, that it could destroy viruses and bacteria at a distance through resonant frequency, that its geometry secretly mirrors the Great Pyramid of Giza, and that Tesla was actually trying to build an early form of artificial intelligence or communicate with something living beneath the Earth's crust. None of these claims are supported by the patent text itself, which is a short, technical, and fairly mundane document about capturing electrical charge from natural radiation. None of them are supported by Tesla's own writings from that period either. They are modern inventions, stitched onto a real man's real invention to manufacture a sense of hidden, forbidden knowledge, the exact kind of framing that tends to perform well for engagement, regardless of whether it's true. It's also worth addressing the claim that this connects to Royal Raymond Rife, a real historical figure from the 1930s, who claimed his so-called Rife machine could cure diseases, including cancer, by targeting pathogens with specific electromagnetic frequencies. Rife's claims were investigated at the time and were never substantiated by independent researchers, and the broader idea of frequency healing that grew out of his work has been rejected by the mainstream medical and scientific community for decades due to a consistent lack of reproducible evidence. Linking Tesla's 1901 patent to Rife's work doesn't add credibility to either claim, since one has nothing established to do with the other. It simply borrows the reputation of two men who are frequently misrepresented in pseudoscience circles and merges their stories together to make a stronger sounding and equally unsupported narrative. So, why does the real story matter more than the fabricated one? Because Tesla's actual life doesn't need embellishment to be remarkable. Here was a man born in 1856 in a small village in what is now Croatia, who arrived in New York in 1884 with almost nothing, and who went on to fundamentally reshape how the modern world generates and uses electricity. His alternating current system remains the standard used across the globe to this day. His work laid groundwork for radio technology, and decades after his death, the United States Supreme Court would formally recognize his priority over Guglielmo Marconi in key radio patent disputes. He held hundreds of patents across his lifetime, ranging from fully practical inventions that reshaped industries to speculative ideas, like the radiant energy collector, that reflected his genuine, if sometimes overly optimistic, belief in the untapped power of the natural world. The 1901 radiant energy patent isn't evidence of a secret government cover-up. It's evidence of exactly what it appears to be on its face: a brilliant, restless inventor trying to solve one of the biggest problems he could imagine: how to give humanity free and unlimited energy, and falling short of the physics required to make it work at any meaningful scale. That's not a disturbing secret. It's simply how invention actually works. For every idea that changes the world, like alternating current, there are dozens of others that don't pan out the way their inventor hoped, and Tesla, for all his genius, was not exempt from that reality. It's also worth noting that when the FBI did examine Tesla's papers following his death in January of 1943, this part actually is well documented. It wasn't some sinister overreach. With the United States actively fighting World War II, government agencies routinely reviewed the papers of scientists and engineers who had worked on anything even loosely connected to advanced technology, largely out of caution that foreign adversaries might attempt to access potentially sensitive information. The engineer brought in to review Tesla's papers, Dr. John G. Trump of MIT, concluded in his official report that Tesla's late-life work was largely theoretical and speculative in nature, without practical or immediately exploitable military value at that time. That conclusion has never been meaningfully overturned by any verified historical document, no matter how many modern videos suggest otherwise. What makes Tesla endlessly fascinating, and honestly what makes him worth making videos about at all, isn't a fictional weapon hidden in a decades-old patent filing. It's a fact that a single human mind managed to be so far ahead of his own era that people are still trying, more than a century later, to fully catch up to what he actually accomplished, and in the process, some of them end up inventing things he never actually did. The real Tesla gave the world alternating current, laid crucial groundwork for radio, and dreamed of a future built on free wireless energy for everyone. He also, like every inventor in history, filed patents based on ideas that didn't hold up once tested against real-world physics. Both of those things can be true at the same time, and honestly, that combination, genuine genius paired with genuine human error, tells a far more compelling story than any invented conspiracy ever could. The next time you see a video claiming an AI has decoded a secret weapon hidden in an old patent, it's worth pausing and asking a simple question. Can you find the original patent yourself? Can you verify the date? Can you find the actual study being cited? In Tesla's case, the real patent is sitting in public records right now for anyone to read, and it tells a much simpler, much more human story than the internet's most viral version of it. Sometimes the truth doesn't need an AI to decode it. It just needs someone willing to go back and actually read the original document.